Welcome to Markegy, the science of marketing strategy, a bi-weekly podcast where all the cool marketers discuss their favorite marketing strategies, study by study. On this show, we feature marketing risk takers who believe long-term wins for the customer equal long-term wins for the business too. How? Human-led marketing, the combination of where science, creativity, and strategy meet, or as we also like to call it, Markegy. Let's break down the marketing trends, myths, and methodologies together. I'm your host, Leanne Dowweimer. Let's go. Good morning. This is Leanne with Markegy, and I'm joined here today by Andres Glusman, co-founder and CEO of DoWhatWorks. Thank you so much for joining us. If you could just introduce us, tell us a little bit about yourself.
My pleasure. So I'm Andres Glusman. I'm the co-founder and CEO of DoWhatWorks. I can answer that in so many different ways. I'm a behavioral scientist at heart, and I'm really passionate about affecting human behavior, and that manifests itself in my career by virtue of sort of figuring out how to affect behaviors of people in business, specifically people by using experiments to help people do things that are in their best interest.
That's great. And I love that you're a behavioral scientist, right? Because that's kind of like where our promise is that I think that marketing is a blend of science and creativity and thinking collaboratively. So I'm having that science background probably helped you a lot, but could you kind of help us understand do what works and what it is and its story?
Yeah. So DoWhatWorks is a company that helps growth leaders do what works. We have an engine that uses a patented technology to help that can detect the experiments that are being run by any company. And our clients use our products that is based on that data to be able to write more effective copy, to be able to identify the parts of their user experience on their website that are maybe not working well, and to identify the things that they can try based on what wins and loses for other people that are in their space in order to be able to help them find wins faster and improve their conversion rates, which in this day and age is kind of one of the most important levers you can pull when budgets are tight and competitive pressures are up, which we're definitely going through right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so there's so much there that it's like, um, and before we started, I want to warn people is that like I'm a kind of a fangirl about platforms like this. So I want to be very clear. This is not like a sponsored episode. I'm just genuinely excited about this because as a marketer, I hate wasting time. And this is definitely a sore spot where um, I feel the pain point that this solves.
Mm.
Uh, so not trying to paint myself as the ideal client, but I see the value in this like wholeheartedly. Um, now tell me a little bit about like you have this really cool example about QR codes and what you noticed.
Mhm.
Can you tell me about that again for everyone to
Yeah.
hear?
So one of the and I don't want my part sound like an ad either, but I'll share with you an example here because we're seeing from our platform. So our platform has detected over 15,000 experiments, and when we detect an experiment being run by a company, we classify them and organize them based on the kind of experiment we're seeing. Is it a button? Are they changing button color? Are they changing copy? Are they changing imagery? And one of the trends that we saw in the last year, which is kind of fascinating, is we saw people start to experiment with using QR codes on their website in order to try and help bridge the gap between your website and getting somebody to download the app on their mobile phone. So companies, have this age-old problem, which is you're on a desktop computer, or you're on your laptop, and they want you to download your app on their app on your phone. So how do they get you to do that? It's not the easiest thing. So what a lot of companies experimented with in the last year, which is really fascinating, wonderful big companies, GoDaddy, Venmo, uh, Robinhood, variety of different companies in their hero images, they started including or testing QR codes. And the idea was that you would aim your phone at the QR code on your screen. It would give you a link that you can then tap to be able to download the app right there. And lo and behold, you're all set and done. And so, really interesting idea. And on the surface, that's like a really cool thing to try in this day and age, right? Everyone now knows how to use a QR code thanks to the pandemic. If you ever want to order anything from a menu, you got to do that. So we saw a lot of experiments where these companies were featuring QR codes on their logged out user experience for on key parts of their real estate on their homepage, on their key sales pages. And what was fascinating about it, and what we started doing, is looking at, well, how often does that win? And our engine can help us detect when an experiment wins and loses, and it categorized it. So we looked at all of the QR code experiments, and we just saw this fundamentally interesting pattern. I think you might already know the answer, so I won't quiz you on it. But what we saw was that, in fact, it was almost universally the case that it lost.
Yeah.
And yeah, go ahead.
I wonder if, because I advise people never put QR codes on their digital graphics
Mhm.
because I'm like, they're already on their device. Like, you can't scan a QR code from your phone. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, grab your iPad to do it? Like, that's crazy. Like, you're not gonna grab an additional device. If you're on your desktop and you're trying to get a mobile app, that is the only place where I think it could even be relevant. But I wonder how much time they spent looking at the device usage and if they were able to only show it on desktop users.
Yeah, I mean, we're able to detect when the experiments are
Yeah.
shown on different platforms, and the results I'm sharing are from the desktop experiments. And I just think it's fascinating because it's one of those things where two things are really fascinating. One, about a year ago, one of the most like interesting Super Bowl ads was just a QR code floating around the screen. And I
Yeah.
think it created a lot of momentum in marketing communities to like, oh, we should do that too. And we should create this thing. And what's fascinating a lot about, in my own personal experience too, but is that things that are like popular and trending are popular and trending because they're popular and trending, not always because they work.
Yeah.
And this is one of those cases where you started seeing a lot of people sort of independently running these experiments and glomming on to see if, to try it for themselves because they thought it was cool and they thought it was working for everyone else. And they all sort of discovered the hard way themselves that, nope, it didn't work pretty much for everyone who tried it in that instance. Now, I'm not going to say that QR codes are never good. I use QR codes all the time now at a restaurant. There's different instances where it's good, but like everything, there's nuance. There's a time and there's a place
Yeah.
for different components and different levers and different approaches. And what's really just like crazy interesting is that if you were to try everything, it would take you like a million years, and it'd take you about a month to try anything for an average company. And what I'm passionate about, maybe this is where you're getting at with efficiency too, is how do you keep somebody from wasting a month of their time, working with all the engineers to get that to happen and getting all the internal approvals and getting it through legal and then launching it only to see it not work. That's totally fine. I mean, like, there's a expression I've used for years that experience is what you get when you don't get what you want, or learning is what you get when you don't get what you want. And that's certainly the case with a lot of experiments. In fact, it's kind of shocking. I was surprised to discover this, but it's consistent with my personal experience when I ran product and growth at Meetup. But is that 80% of experiments that people run do not positively move the needle.
I believe it. I mean, that sounds more realistic than anything that I can imagine. QR codes I use when I don't have any better way to accomplish what I'm trying to accomplish.
Mm,
I found myself in a role where I was ordering print publication advertising. That is one of the few ways that you can try to create a guess as to how many people are engaging with your
yeah,
print ad. Or if you were doing like a bus stop, you know, those big, very top of funnel moves. Um, but there's a couple things I want to just kind of like pull out from everything you just said because there's so many golden things. Kind of thinking back to like, the psychological premise of like mob theory
mhm,
and like, how social proof works is that social proof doesn't always just mean I saw a testimonial on a website. It's I saw other people doing this experiment and using QR codes on their website all over the place.
yeah,
And it's amazing how powerful it is, even when we don't intend it to be.
yeah. One of the funny things I witnessed is there's a company that is very I saw one company running a test. I don't even remember what they specifically they were testing, but it was an approach to getting people to sign up. And then I saw their competitor copy the variant of the test that they were just running. So the competitor was like, "Oh, they're doing this thing. I need to do exactly what they just did." But they saw that they were like they actually happened to witness the losing side of that variant in action when it was live. And so then they went ahead and copied them. And they
Oh no.
reran that experiment themselves, just because they were just following what other people did. And so, look, I think we all stand on the shoulders of giants. Like this industry is what it is because we've been able to learn from each other, kind of get inspired by other people. The art and the science is really figuring out what to copy and what not to copy, or what to use the inspiration and what to leave behind. And to your point, you're 100% right. I think people get a little too carried away that, oh, this big brand did it. Apple did this, therefore we should do it.
Yeah, you're not Apple.
There's a lot of reasons why Apple is very successful, and it's got nothing to do with wearing a black turtleneck. It's got very little to do with wearing a black turtleneck, but people sort of copy the wrong parts of it. I didn't mean to offend you.
If you're only listening, I'm wearing a black turtleneck, but simply because I like to wear black shirts on this show so that when I'm recording video, my pink cheeks, I can color balance correctly.
That's
Um,
fantastic. That's really amazing. Well, put in my mouth there.
no, it's hilarious. But it's true. I'm not wearing a black turtleneck because I'm trying to emulate the founders that wear black turtlenecks. I just so happen to be, early on West Coast time, and I'm like this. Like mine is more functionally based. Um, but kind of it's coming back to our topic at hand is I have this concept I call the learning velocity. And what it means is basically that, like pipeline velocity, an organization, the faster, the higher their velocity of learning is, the more efficient they are with money, the more they're going to grow, and they're really going to see those business results. And what I tell people to look for is to look for those places where you can have your starting point in that velocity curve higher,
Mm,
and this is one of those places where instead of starting in, the bottom left, like very zero corner, like a serial entrepreneurial that's like a person who's failed a few times, you don't start in that bottom corner. You have a higher starting point to your
mm.
curve because there's already the learning that other people did.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. It almost reminds me of the rocket ship, or the some people call it hockey stick.
Yeah, the hockey stick.
The hockey stick. And what's actually happening, so right, you're working really, really hard, and you're trying for as long as you possibly can. You're doing everything you can to try and get something to stick. And no matter how much effort you're putting in, you're not necessarily seeing the results, because every one of those things is getting you closer and closer to what actually works.
Yeah.
And it's upon discovering what actually works that you start to bend upwards, and you start doubling down and doing more of the things that are like that. And that's why you start seeing people hockey stick upwards. And so, to your point, the learning velocity, like you're talking about, determines, well, how long are you on the flat part of that curve?
Are you
And
gonna make it? Are you gonna run out of your cash runway?
big time, right? And how quickly can you get to the bend in the elbow? And that's perfect. One of our
Don't
it's
steal it.
well, one of our clients, which I did steal, says, sort of like, well, your goal is to sort of skip the regular season and
Yeah,
go straight to the playoffs. And so you
exactly.
can use data. He says he worked with us because he used our data to skip the regular season and just go straight to the playoffs where things get interesting. And to your point, that's like, how do you start as close to the bend in the elbow as possible, so that you're still learning, but you're just not turning over a lot of stones that you don't need to be turning over.
Yeah, you're learning in a more relevant way that is very on target with your goals and your audience.
That's right.
Um, because, you know, from what I understand is that you're able to, you're comparing against like businesses on your platform,
Mhm.
and there's some benefit, there's a lot of benefit to that. But you want to make sure that your brand and your specific setup is formulated in a way that is unique. And so you can't always just take what works from someone else.
That's right.
Otherwise you're just everybody else.
That's exactly right. And you want to be very mindful of, and this is again, there's nuance here, but you want to be very mindful, like you're saying, there are certain behaviors that make a lot of sense in a business context that don't make sense in a consumer context.
Yeah.
or vice versa. And so the things that work in a B2B setting maybe are not the things that streaming companies should be using. That being said, the coolest thing is like the places for innovation is when you jump and you look at areas that have nothing to do with that in theory, you're not competitors, but you can learn a lot from. For example, Southwest Airlines is super famous for being very efficient at getting their planes off the ground. They make all their money when your plane's on the ground. An airline doesn't make money, and they want to get the plane back up and running as fast in the air as fast as possible. And what they then do and need to do is have their ground crews be really efficient. They don't study United Airlines. They don't study Delta to figure out how to do that faster. They study Formula One pit crews.
Yeah.
Right. And they use the insights from Formula One pit crews to figure out, okay, what can we do with our setup to get our planes back up in the air as fast as possible. And so in a similar way, there's an opportunity to learn from the people who are doing nothing like what you're doing. If you're a B2B company, maybe you could learn from direct to consumer companies and steal what's working for them, as opposed to just learning from and evaluating the experiments and the things that your competitors are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned that B2B customers also now have B2C level expectations. And that's a tenet that like I bring to everything I do, is that, you do need to blur the lines instead of just staying in your vertical, because humans are humans.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't show up with I show up with a tempered personality at work. I act a little bit more professionally, a little bit less casually, but I'm still me. Like, I'm still going to be like, wow, this customer service sucks. I am not putting up with this. I've got other things to do. I am moving on, and we are picking a different vendor, you know?
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's probably one of the best things that's happened to software in the last decade or so, is that as SaaS has really taken off, the end user experience has become that much more important, and getting people to adopt things on their own, as opposed to just having it be sold to a CIO somewhere and kind of forced into the organization, having it bubble up. And that's really raised the bar on the customer experience, on the consumer experience, and the user experience. And rightly so, the expectations have gone up. And so if you're creating a brand new software in this day and age for B2B companies, you have to approach it in a way that and be of the standard that a Netflix is going to be at, that that a Spotify, that a Hulu, that a Disney, whatever the case may be. You need to sort of deliver on a similar like experience as best as you can, because that's what the expectations are going to be.
Yeah, it comes back to your standing on the shoulders of giants. It These things that were a big deal 10 years ago have just become pillars of our culture.
It's true.
And that's so cool because, it allows people right now that are developing something innovative, that are, those next garage startup people, n- in 30 years, what could they be? It's only gonna grow. Um, and tools like this will help it there. That being said, if you totally, just are inefficient and bad at business, like, it's probably not going to grow. But
It's true. Yeah.
that's the thing about entrepreneurialism that really gets me excited. It's just the possibilities, the what ifs, and the dream, and the inspiration, that the visionary leadership aspect of it, that of the possibilities. Um, so, kind of thinking about when this is a good fit, we talked about how you do have to be nuanced, and you do have to kind of be mindful with how you use it. When is it not appropriate for someone to kind of try your platform, or who's this not for?
Yeah. So there's kind of two main parts of the platform. There's a part that helps you write great ad copy by using AI and the winning variants from other people. And then there's the part that is helps you get people through the front door. So get people to the front door and through the front door. When it comes to getting people through the front door, the reality is that if you don't have a ton of traffic coming to your website, so if you're early stages, if you're an early startup, you want to do the best you can to get the best version of a website up and running.
Yeah.
But a 10%, 15%, 20%, even 30% improvement in your conversion rates on a very, very, very small number may not be worth all the effort that it's going to take in order to optimize your website to find and squeak out and collect all the wins to get that improvement. So the number one thing that you need in order to take advantage of a platform that helps you improve the conversion rates on your site is traffic. If you don't have traffic, if you're not exposed to people, then the impact will be relatively small. And there's maybe bigger wins you can get by focusing that same resource, the dollars, the energy on creating a good, solid baseline experience, but then focusing those resources maybe on getting better distribution or getting other things. And typically at this juncture, we work more with mid-market and enterprise size companies. We work with 6 of the top streaming brands like B2B SaaS unicorns. Those are the folks who like love us because when they get a win, it's multiplied times billions of dollars. That's kind of the big deal. When you have a win that's multiplied times tens of dollars or hundreds of dollars in a day, maybe that's not as important, right? So number one is just that conversion has to be something that's meaningful for you on that side. That being said, we are launching a brand new ad product that is allows you to make better optimizations on the copy you're running on your ads and search engine marketing. And then that is good for anybody who's running ads because basically every single % improvement you get on your click-through rates and your engagement basically gets you more volume for your money and like a better quality score and therefore more love, right? And
Yeah.
so we did actually, part of my motivation is because I'm an entrepreneur and I love working with the entrepreneur community. That new product we're really excited about because we can now actually start working with our brothers and sisters in the startup community and start helping them get more customers and get more efficient, as you say, with the money they're spending.
There's just so many ways that like you can approach this, and I think that you called out something and that I want to reiterate this to the very early stage people is that sometimes mediocre is enough.
Hmm.
Your website's number one job at the very beginning is just to prove that you exist. It is to answer questions, your basic FAQs. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It has to exist.
Hmm.
Um, and you want to do it as best you can, but mediocre, not bad, but mediocre can be enough. And when you really have very few, if you have a marketing department that's like one person, then you have bigger fish to fry.
That's right.
Um,
As long as it meets like a professional standard, it can't
yeah,
look
yeah.
it can't look like a middle schooler put it together on GeoCities, but which is not what I'm saying. I know, but as long as it looks like it's professional and it conveys enough about what it is that you need conveyed. Um, Obsessing about squeaking out every single pixel and making small improvements are not necessarily going to move the needle in ways that bigger, bolder changes would do at that juncture. And that's what you need to be testing because you have so little traffic that's where you need to be focusing your resources.
Yeah, exactly. It's about moving the needle. And I could definitely see how this could help a company that is in like mid market, move up market,
Hmm.
and things like that. So because they have the investment and the resources to make it actionable,
That's right.
because
That's
that's the
It's
part
actually
too.
really, and they're interesting because they don't yet have the traffic that their bigger competitors do.
Yeah.
And so they have a little bit of a resource. They have the footing, they have the beachhead, but they really need to figure out how to increase the velocity, and their traffic limits their ability
Mhm.
to get experiments and get learning. And so if you can 10x the number of experiments they're learning from on a given month, well, then they've 10x their velocity and they're going to find the good stuff faster. They're going to find the stuff that works sooner.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff with AI that and things like this. Let's talk about the future of marketing.
Mm.
Where do you want it to go versus where do you think it should, or where do you think you want it to go versus where do you think it's going with or without our opinion?
Yeah. What a great question. It's such you just referenced AI too. So obviously that's gonna be a big, big part of it. But where's the future of marketing going? We are in a world right now. that's getting noisier and noisier. And what's funny is if I'd had this conversation with you 20 years ago, we probably would have been talking about how noisy it is with the internet, right? And now it's even like 1,000 times noisier. And we probably would have been having that same conversation 20 years before that with cable television and how it's getting noisy now. But it's really truly a noisier and noisier world. It's harder and harder to break through. And that's only going to get worse the easier it gets to produce content and the easier it gets to produce words and put words out there. And so the value or the impact that you need to have from the attention that you're able to garner, when you're able to get a little bit of attention, like harnessing that and capitalizing it is going to become so much more important because it's going to become so much scarcer.
Mhm.
And it's really interesting in that it's a good thing that AI is going to make it possible for us to like 10x our productivity or 1,000x our productivity with regard to that. We're starting to use the AI on this new copywriting tool based on the winning variants that we see people run. It is so cool. I mean, it kind of is like it's magical. We didn't expect AI to be this good this quick, and it's gotten there. And so you can only imagine how much better it's going to be 5-10 years from now. It's going to be a little scary. But all that being said, what it means is that like things are going to become very efficient. And what I think the challenge is going to be is how do you bring the humanity through? How do you like convey the soul of what you're working on and make an emotional connection? And the do that in a way that breaks through the things that are written by robots, essentially. So I do hope that humans will be able to suss out and sort of get a different feel for what's written by robots. But the reality is that the parts of humans are going to become more of editor or more curator than creator.
Yeah.
And it's going to be the role of the marketer to be like really good at figuring out how to like generate the right stuff and then curate it. And it's going to be a curation job more than it's going to be a production job.
Absolutely. I think one of the super skills that marketers should develop right now, yesterday, 10 years ago, is learning how to intimately understand the nuances of their customers by directly engaging with them, by watching social platforms, by understanding sentiment analysis,
Mm,
by really looking at everything from that macro level systems approach, and looking at what the feedback loops are interacting to either like make something bigger or smaller or amplify things. Um,
you're
when
totally
I
right.
s-
Yeah, go ahead.
when I say this, this is a tangent, so apologies, but I'm going to do it anyways. If you look at what I call the panic feedback loop, and what this is that we as humans, when we see something alarming, it gets and keeps our attention because
Mhm,
that's a survival instinct. That's how we're hardwired. That is necessary, right?
mhm,
And how this has been exploited is the if it bleeds, it leads
mm,
media cycles. And so it creates this loop of, first, something alarming will happen and someone will be alarmed and then they'll like shout it to everyone they know. And then it starts to go viral on the socials and then it becomes a news story. And then the feedback loop amplifies and amplifies and amplifies. And all of a sudden, everybody's panicked about whatever that may be. Um, and so when you look at it, when you're able to take like 5 steps backwards and intersect where how people operate, how the platforms operate, and how, the big corporations for media operate and understand what's in each of those players' best interests that they're going to do and how they intersect, you're
mhm.
better able to humanize and understand and amplify your stuff. Now, you should use it ethically. Please don't create panic feedback loops unless there's like a real reason to panic. So, humanizing it and getting to know how people operate and how your individual people operate and all of the 360 holistic sense of them, I think is going to be really really impactful for like you mentioned like the curation
Uh,
of of how your entire marketing flows.
you're totally right, right? Because what is the AI is going to be great at generating stuff, but it's only going to be as good as the insights that it uses to generate the stuff. So AI is if you have a great training set of data, if you tell it what to look at in the right ways, it'll generate really good stuff. But if you tell it the wrong things to look at, it's going to generate things that are just not right, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. The insights, the skill of knowing what your customers want and knowing the components and knowing what they're going to respond to and the what works and doesn't work in their specific nuance is so important to the training data because it's garbage in, garbage out.
Yes,
And
exactly.
you can use your smart insight there. That will be a fundamental differentiator in a world where making things is easy.
Yeah. Right now, the way it stands is that we tell the AI, we train it, we teach it, we request it. It
Yeah.
is just a code of logic. It is not synthesizing stuff. It is just following instructions. And if you write bad instructions, you're going to get bad results.
That's right. That's right. It's only as good as the training set. And that's what's really neat. I mean, that's where I think that we're excited about that because we can't wait to see what our data helps to train it to do.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's true across the board for any kind of problem that you want AI to solve, which is fundamentally knowing what data to give it is what will ultimately determine the outcome of whether the thing it gives you back is any good or not.
Yeah, I can already think of some misinformation that people have created with Chat GPT because they fed it like
It's so easy. It's so convincing. It's really, really convincing, and it's wrong. I mean, it will get better, but again, it will get better because the training will get better, and the rules around sort of like refining what it comes back with will get better, but only as a result of the cycles and the iteration loops based on the data that's put in.
I just want to keep talking to you. You have so many like great
Go
insights and knowledge. I'm going to ask a bonus question
for it.
that I didn't warn you about. So, if you think of one of the coolest things besides this that you've done professionally,
Mm.
what would it be?
What am I really proud? Like when I think about things that I look back on my career, and what I'm really proud of are and what I really love and what motivates me is like innovation and breakthroughs. And so anytime where I'm able to feel like I created a breakthrough on something, I rewrote the rules on something pretty fundamentally important to find a like saying, yeah, that's awesome. Conventional wisdom is cool, but what if we did this?
Mhm.
And I've done that a lot and it doesn't always work, but when that works, it's so cool. And so the times where I've done that, there's just like many, many times where it worked out, which were great and around getting involved in running some of the first experiments online or building a usability lab that sort of threw out all of the rules of usability testing and for the same amount of money for like under $32,000 a year, instead of running 1 day of usability sessions, be able to run, 400 sessions in a year, or completely just rethinking the end-to-end experience to generate 10x the results in kind of same amount of cost or less. So that's the kind of stuff that I'm really motivated by. I can share specific stories. But what a cool question. So to me, it's anything I can do that's just like a breakthrough by just going to the first principles and rewriting the rules. I'm an immigrant. I'm a youngest child. So these are all like factors for me that like
Yeah, rules need not apply.
if you don't if you're the youngest and you follow all the rules then you're eating last, but if you can rewrite the rules then you have a fighting chance. And my siblings were wonderful, so don't get me wrong, they're wonderful, generous humans, but I think as a youngest child it's pretty consistent that that's the kind of behavior you'll see.
Yeah, I'm the youngest too, and I
Mm.
like to think that youngest children we're scrappy,
Very-
right?
yeah.
We see maybe there's an older sibling that is very that the first child that like follows the rules and parents feel like they know what they're doing, and then all of a sudden we come along and we're like, no, we're gonna do this.
Very much so. So I love that. I love seeing stories about that. I like doing that. I feel pride when I'm like successful at taking something and turning it on its head. Because you can.
Yeah,
That's really fun for me. And it helps because I'm the youngest and because I'm also a foreigner. You just sort of see things as more arbitrary, which I think is a nice thing.
awesome. No, I definitely appreciate that. And then I don't wanna you're such an amazing resource that I don't wanna, like, underutilize my time asking you questions. So, I'm gonna throw you another one. It'll be the last one, I swear.
Yeah.
But what is a question that you wish people asked you, but they miss out on asking you? What is an unasked question
Sure.
that we
Wanna,
should be asking you to learn more?
um, really, really, first of all, that's a great question. That's the question.
I
Is
stole it from someone. I'm sorry.
the good one. What is the unasked question, or what is the thing that I'm passionate about that I can share or learn? Um,
Or if you're solving a problem for somebody and they're asking, like 10 questions and you're like, no, what you really should be asking is this. Like you're missing the point.
all right, I will give you my favorite question in that regard. So it was almost a caricature. Like I was made fun of at Meetup because I would ask this every single time we were embarking on anything. We are about to launch anything. The thing I would ask of my team every single time was, what has to break in your favor in order for this to work out?
Yeah.
What's the number one thing that has to break in your favor in order for this to work out? And that changes over the course of any given project. The thing that initially has to break in your favor is that maybe you have to know, like when you're launching a new company or working on a project, that your hunch as to what the problem is, it needs to break in your favor. People actually have to have this problem. They have to actually want to improve their conversion rates, or people have this problem. They actually want to lose weight. That's not those aren't hard things necessarily to do. The next question was, oh well, then the thing that has to break in my favor is that the way that I'm thinking about it has to align with how they think about it. And then my solution actually has to work. And then I have to be able to get in front of people, or I have to do this. There's whatever project you're working on. If you ask the question up front, what has to break in your favor in order for this to work? That reveals all of the stuff that is not important and lets you hone in on the one thing that is, like the number one thing.
Yeah.
And you focus on right away. And nothing matters until you solve that. And then
Yeah.
once you solve that, it's like going to an amusement park where you only get a ticket to the next ride once you've completed the ride. So if you've solved that one thing that's to break in your favor, you get rewarded with getting to answer that question again. What's the next thing that has to break in your favor? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? What's the next thing? And over and over and over again. And that's a methodology that is extremely, as a framework goes, is extremely flexible. And I will be hard pressed to find a situation where that's not gonna work. Maybe the only place where that wouldn't work is maybe in a two-sided marketplace where two things have to break in your favor at the same time. But that's the thing that has to break in your favor, is the two things that have to break in your favor. So it's a very flexible framework, and it's the most useful thing that I've used in the times where I've been most successful.
Awesome. I love that question. And, the project management like brain in me comes out with in order to mitigate risk, you just flip it on its side. You say, what can't break in order for this to work?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Uh, Awesome. That's going to make my whole day. I love that question.
I love it, and it's bright and early for you too. So you can.
It is. What so thank you so much for sharing all of this. And like I said, you're an incredible resource and you're brilliant. And so I'm really thankful to be able to have this conversation with you. If someone else wanted to reach out and, connect with you, what are some ways that they can do that?
Yeah. So the best place is through LinkedIn. That's where I like to share whatever's on my mind. But they can also, LinkedIn is just, Glusman, Andres Glusman at LinkedIn. I'll put my email out there too. If you want to get a hold of me through email, it's just Andres at DoWhatWorks.io. ANDRES at DoWhatWorks.io.
Awesome. Thank you for spelling it out too, because that was going to be my next question. Well, this is Leanne from Markegy. And if you guys have any questions that you want to ask me, just reach out to info@markegy, markigy.com. And thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much for being here.
It was my pleasure. Such a fun conversation.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Markegy, the science of marketing strategy. If any of the strategies we talked about today inspired you to learn more, try them. Remember, the perfect strategy doesn't exist, only the one that gets done. Subscribe to our show on your favorite podcast player to make sure that you never miss an episode. Thanks for listening. Until next time.